Hey, Ray, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. So last we left off, okay, I'm going to just close all these windows. Okay, we fixed our back end so that way it has a way to deal with cores. So now the login should be all good and working. So what we're going to want to do next is that we want to push you to another page. So history dot, well, we don't, so basically, just as a reminder, when we created our route for this particular page, so this route, we passed the router props. Okay, so if I'm not quite sure what this syntax means, I would read my article on router. You can go to my blog to find that. That's over there at toots.alexmercedcoder.com and just look for my router article, Understanding React Router, and I explain what that syntax is essentially doing. But it's essentially passing what's called the router props, history, location, match to the login component. So login can make use of them. So let's do that. So let's go back to login and we're going to use props.history. And the reason we really care about history is mainly because we want this function called push that allows us to push us to a new URL. And we'll push it to to-dos. Okay. So now we just need to create a route that receives that. So I'm literally just going to copy this route so that I don't have to typo that again. Okay, except this time the URL is to-dos, and this time it's going to render a component called the to-dos. Now we just need to create that component. I will just copy and paste login and rename that to-dos. So let's edit that, and I'm going to just empty out this component. Okay, and this will be to-dos. And this will be to-dos. And again, it's going to display multiple to-dos, which is why I called it to-dos. If it represented one single to-do, then I would have called it to-do. Naming conventions can oftentimes make this easier to read. And for now, this will just return an H1 that says to-dos, just to make sure that we'll just make sure that it's actually rendering right. Okay, so let me just clean up this. Okay, and let's import it into app. Import to-dos from /pages/to-dos. Okay. So now I should be able to log in and it pushes me to the to-dos page. So we'll see like the login form disappear because it's moving it to a different, well, actually technically it'll still be there. We'll fix that too. Alex Merced, cheese. And see now to-dos appears. But I don't want this to appear. This is essentially the login page. I don't want two pages to be showing up. So to fix that, I need to go back to my routes. And I only really want this one to show up only if the URL is exactly the root. So if it's not the main page, don't show that. So exact path, which means it'll only show it if it's that exact path. Cool. I could also make a switch and then flip their order, but I think this is the quickest solution at the moment. Okay, so now if I try this, see there, now if I refresh, I'm going to be logged out again. Well, let me do a hard refresh. Oh, because the URL. So if I go back to the main page, I have to log in again. Like I said, cheese, and then that succeeds. Good. Now I want this page to be able to make the API call using the key that's an app, the tokens. So what I'm going to do is back in our app where we have the route, I will pass the tokens to to-dos. We don't need all this. Instead, we need tokens equals token. Okay, cool. So now it'll have the tokens available to it, so that way it can make API calls inside of to-dos. So now we can go back to to-dos. Let's create a state to hold our to-dos in. Const to-dos set to-dos equals react.useState null. Okay, and then we're going to create a function, const get to-dos equals an async function. And all this function does, actually we're going to want to pass down the URL as well. So let's do that too. Let's pass down the URL equals URL. Okay, so that way we can do const response equals await fetch props.url plus to-dos. That's a GET request, which is going to be by default. We still have to pass in the secondary object though, because we need to specify headers and all that stuff. So what we need is the method. So it's a GET request. We need headers. And the only header, we're not sending a body, so the only header we really need is authorization. And that's going to end up being bear with an uppercase B space, and then it's props.tokens.access. So the access token gets interpolated there. Then we get const the data back when we do response.json, and then we can set to-dos to equal the data. Okay, and let's console log the data too, so we make sure that we got it. Okay, so right now I should be able to see the console log now. So let's see if I do that. Do I see the console log? Okay, so let's go back to the main page and log in again. Oops, okay, so yeah, I'd rather go back to the main page here. Alex Merced, cheese. Okay. And okay, well, didn't make the API call because we made the function, but we never actually made the call. So to make the call, when the component loads, we need to use the use effect hook, use effect, and then we just pass in an arrow function, and that arrow function, all it's going to do is just run the get to-dos function. And we never want it to run again, so we pass in an empty array. Okay, and let's see what it says. Uncut promise 404 not found. Okay, so let's take a look at the network, see what happened there. To-dos. Okay, did we send? Okay, yeah, did send it with the token. I think it's because it's to do. That's the issue. To do. Let's try that. Yep, that looks like a lot better. So let's go to the console. We're still getting a promise. So I forgot an await somewhere. Yep, I forgot an await right here. Await. Because it didn't wait for the promise to finish. So now, and there's the empty array. Again, we haven't made any to-dos yet because even though we made to-dos locally, we didn't make any to-dos in the thing. Okay, so we got some to-dos. That's cool. Cool. And then all we really want to do is just return some JSX. So let's go back to where it says return to-dos. And we're going to wrap this in a fragment. Okay. And to-dos, we'll make a UL. And then we'll just generate LIs for each. So first we have to check if there's to-dos. So to-dos. Okay, and so if to-dos should initialize as null, so it should only be worth something if it successfully made the request. So if to-dos actually resolves true, even if it's an empty array, then what's going to do, it's to-dos. Well, actually, let's do it this way. If to-dos and to-dos dot length is greater than 0. So that way it just doesn't bother to do this unless there's actually a to-do. So both things have to be true. To-dos have to exist, which means an empty array counts. But if it is an array, then that array has to have at least more than one thing. If that's the case, what we want to do is take to-dos dot map, and then for each to-do, we just want to return an h1 with the to-do because it's just a string. So it should just return an array. Well, actually no, it should return an array of objects. So it should be to-do.item. Okay. And that's if it is successful. Now if it fails, like let's say it's false, then just nothing. Okay. And that's what it'll render there. Now what I also want is a form to add more to-dos. So we want to create an input of type equals text. I'm just going to call it name new to-do. Not that the name is really going to matter since I'm not doing a controlled form, because it's really just one input. I'm not going to bother with the whole controlled form for one input. And then a button new to-do. Okay, and now what we need to do is create a ref to hold the to-do data. So const new to-do equals react.useRef null. Then we're going to ref this input. Ref equals new to-do. So we can use this ref to go grab the form data later on. And then we just need a function for when we hit that button. And what's going to happen when we click that button, console const handle new equals event, because it's happening when the button is clicked, so it gets an event. Not that I'm going to use it. And what I want to do, and I want this make this async. Okay. What I want to do is const response equals await fetch, and it's going to fetch again at props.url plus to do, except now the method is a post because it's adding. So post the headers, we still need our authorization header because we need to give the bearer token. So bearer, let's do that with backticks. Bearer props dot tokens dot access, and then we need to specify the content type so that we know we're sending JSON over. Content type, that's got to be a string because that uses the dash, and that's going to be application JSON. I've typed that enough times. Okay, I'm probably missing a comma here. Yes, I am. Good. And the last thing is the body. Okay. Okay, body. Then we're going to do JSON dot stringify. This should be an object with the item that just equals the string, which is inside new to do. New to do dot current dot value. So I'm just stringifying that string because again, this one property we need to pass in, that's item. The actual route should generate its own ID number. It was just when I was doing it manually from SQL, I had to kind of manually set a number. Okay, and that should create a new to-do. Now, I don't need to get the response, so I don't care about what I do with the response. What I do care about is doing get to-dos again to get the updated list of to-dos. Okay. And now I should be able to add to-dos. Let me just see here. Get to-do for when unauthorized. I'm going to have to relog in again. So let's see here. Alex Merced. Cheese. So now I'm here. Okay. Suddenly doesn't like my token. Let's take a look at the network. What's wrong with my token? Oh, see, it says bear undefined, which means it didn't get the token that time. Why not? So let's go back. Alex Merced. Cheese. And still not getting the token. Like this, the request is coming in. Now let me just take a look at components. Let's take a look at to-dos. Is it getting the tokens? There's the tokens. It is getting it. So let's take a look. Token props.tokens.access. Am I using the right key? Props.tokens.access. That is correct. Props.tokens.access. Bear props.tokens.access. Yet it still thinks tokens.access. If I refresh this page, well, yeah, it's definitely not going to get it because now there should be definitely no token in the component. Yeah, so see, no tokens. Because this was working just a second ago. So let's try this again. Alex Merced. Cheese. Okay, so I don't know if you saw that, but you saw like to-dos loaded faster than the to-dos than the actual token came in. So here's where we're running into an issue. We don't want to push two to-dos until after the tokens comes in. So we need to change our logic a little bit, which means here where I do the history.push, I can't do that there. Because that's going to happen before this finishes happening. So there's a way to do this. I'm going to go back to my app.js, and I need history.props history here. So I'm going to have to go back to index.js, and I have to alter this to be a route. So I'm going to also bring in route from router, and we're going to alter how we do this. So it's going to become route component equals app. Okay, and then the path is just going to equal slash, so that way it's always on the screen. And that just makes app the children of a route, which gives it the router props because we're using that component prop, which is the other way to pass router props, but I can't pass any additional props. Okay, so let's try that out. So in that case, now that we have that, what I can do is I can do a use effect react.use effect. Okay, that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually initialize the token as null. Okay, so then what's going to happen is that inside this use effect, if token if token, so I mean if token is null, okay, and then we're only going to want to run this whenever token changes. Okay, and we'll just say when token dot access changes. Okay. Okay. Let me think about that. Then let me start this off as an empty object. Okay, and then so if there's an access token, then it's going to do hist props dot hist props dot props dot history dot push, and pushes to / todos. Okay, else do nothing. Okay, and then if token changes, now what is it not like? Props is not defined, so I gotta define props in app. Props. Okay, and now we should be sort of functioning here. Let's go back to the main page. See if that works. So far that's looking okay, and yep, that works better. Because see, then what happens is that it doesn't push you to to-dos until this actually comes in. So when that refresh access token changes value, that's when it'll run that use effect again, which will then push us to where we need to be pushed to. Okay. Oops, looks like that zoom ended. Good. And I'm going to leave it at that. We will do the final pieces a little bit later on. Ciao.